I'm going to begin canning the peaches that I bought from the grocery store. I've got my water bath canner with my bottles heated and ready to go. My lids and bands are simmering in the pot on the stove. Got boiling water ready to go to blanch and heat up the peaches. And I've got a pot full of unsweetened apple juice starting to boil. That's what I fill the jars with. And my water's boiling for me to blanch my peaches. So one layer at a time, I'm going to leave them in the hot water just to warm them through for about a minute. Then I've got a pot to transfer them in. And this pot will keep them warm while I'm filling up the jars. So we're just going to let that go for about a minute just to warm them up. Now I chose to use apple juice, unsweetened apple juice, to can it so I won't have the syrup and all the extra added sugar. Okay, so it's been about a minute. I'm going to take these out and continue with the rest. Okay, now I'm ready to fill my jars with the peaches and the hot apple juice. I've taken my jars out of the water bath canner using a jar lifter. You want to make sure you use this because if not, you will burn your hands. Okay, I've got my funnel in the jar and I'm just going to start adding the peaches. You want to make sure you have an inch of headspace in the jar. And that's about to right here is when you fill up the peaches, to right here. Headspace is the amount of space between the food you have in the jar and the top of the jar. Fill that one up. See, this recipe has used actually 2 quarts, so about 4 pints. So the rest, you need to fill the rest of the bottle with the hot apple juice, and that needs a 1/2 inch headspace. So you ladle that in. And after you ladle it in the jars, you're going to use this little stick, which is something you use to get the air out of the jars. It also, at this end, has measurements for headspace. So if we need 1/2 inch headspace, I'll find 1/2 inch on here, and that gives me 1/2 inch. So first I'm going to take the air out because I might be able to add some more liquid once all the air is out and the peaches have kind of settled in the jar. So what you do is you just take this the end of this little stick and you just run it all the way around the jar to get the air bubbles out. Okay, and it looks like I have room for more liquid, so I'm going to fill it up. So that's about 1/2 inch of headspace. Let's measure that just to be sure. Looks like I can probably put more liquid in. Just a little bit more. And now what you want to do is wipe the lids off. the rim of the lids before you put the two-piece cap on. This just gets any kind of little pieces that are on the rim and any liquid that may prevent it from sealing. So next you take your lid lifter. It's magnetized at the end so you don't burn your hands getting the lids and the bands out of the hot water. You just put them on the jar. Sometimes everything kind of sticks to it because of the magnet. Now my lids are on, so I'm going to put the bands on. Tighten them a little, and then when I'm all done putting the bands on, I'll get them a little bit tighter before I put them into the canner. What I'm going to do now is put my jars of peaches into my water bath canner. And on the inside you have a rack. You want to use a towel or something to pick it up so you don't burn your hands. And this rack just kind of sits right on the side of the pot, and that way you can put your jars in more easily. With the jar lifter, I'm going to put them in there. And when you're putting jars in the water bath canner, when they're processing, you don't want them to touch. Now we just put the lid on it, and we wait for it to boil. And once it starts to boil, and then you time it for its processing time. And this recipe calls for 25 minutes. My peaches have processed for 20 minutes and then sat in the water for another 5. So now I'm going to lift them out of the pot and set them down on this towel that I have so they can seal and cool off. So with my jar lifter, I'm going to lift them straight up and set them down on the towel. As they start to cool off, the jars are going to seal and you're going to hear a ping or popping sound. I'm going to wait a while, so maybe you might hear the ping sound.